Friends, just because there are not big explosions happening, most people think this war has culminated. I would say the war has now actually reached its most critical stage. In fact, a historic stage and an inflection point. I'll explain in this video why this has happened, why Iran now is slightly on the back foot, and the outcome of the coming few days will determine the next few years. But before I do so, if you find my videos add any value to you, please like and subscribe. Please share whatever you can. This, especially when you comment and like my videos, it pushes us up in the algorithm. YouTube suggests it to many more people, and we can then therefore start recovering much of the energy, time, and cost that we have invested. You would have noticed that Trump is saying that the war is coming to an end and this weekend we'll arrive at a deal. Maybe he's going to travel himself to Islamabad. In fact, he has even said that Iran is now ready to hand over most of its nuclear material, which everybody considers to be its trump card. Well, the simple reason is he has always set his sights on the price of oil and on the stock market. He wants to calm them down. Whenever he comes out with such statements, the stock market seems to recover and the oil market, in fact, falls. The price of oil falls by at least around 15, sometimes $20 a barrel. This buys him more time to prosecute the war because the only real cost for Trump himself is the political blowback due to higher oil prices or due to a falling stock market. So far, he has not suffered much. His approval ratings are about where they were before the war began. His core base is still with him, 35 to 40% of the voting population. Of course, it has cost the US taxpayer about $200 billion, but that's not going from Trump's pocket. But Iran, on the other hand, has come under severe strain since the US has started the blockade of the Iranian coast. No ships are allowed to go in or out, and this includes all ships, not just oil tankers, but even food carriers, day-to-day goods. And as we know, Iran is a net food importer. So in a few days, Iran is going to feel this pressure intensely. And so for Iran, it is important that the price of oil be pushed up. In the spot market, it's already around $150 a barrel. But this price has to go up to $200 or $250 for Trump and America to feel the pain, for them to agree to some of Iran's terms also. Otherwise, it will be a very one-sided negotiation. For this, it is necessary that Iran manage to close down the Bab al-Mandab, that is, the strait which connects the Red Sea to the Indian Ocean. That is at where Aden is located, that is the Aden end of the Red Sea. This would close down about 6% of the world's oil supplies, in addition to the 13% that have been closed due to Hormuz. This 6% translates roughly into the 6 million barrels that Saudi offloads from the port of Yanbu on the Red Sea. That is, Saudi Arabia has built an oil pipeline which takes oil from its oil-producing region, which is on its eastern coast in the Persian Gulf, the Dhahran, Dammam area, and it is pushed along this pipeline to its Red Sea coast. This, if it is blocked, would give Iran some real leverage. Why is Iran not able to do this? Well, there could be only two reasons. The instrument that Iran would have to activate would be the Houthis. Now, either the Houthis are too weak and not capable of doing this, or they are unwilling. Why could they be unwilling? Well, because the Houthis, who had previously been in a conflict with Saudi Arabia and had bombed some of their oil sites, had later come to an agreement that as long as Saudi Arabia pays the salaries for some of the Houthis' employees, the Houthis in turn would not touch any of Saudi Arabia's oil infrastructure. This deal has so far held, and that's why Houthis have not so far blocked the Red Sea. Now, Saudi Arabia is in arrears. It has not paid the salaries for a while. And so the Houthis have been threatening Saudi Arabia in the past few weeks. So now it would be a contest between whose influence is greater, Iran's or the Saudis on the Houthis. Now, Iran itself has two paths ahead. One would have been to close down the Bab al-Mandab. The second option is for Iran to extend the negotiation. That is, if the ceasefire, which is about to end on Tuesday, is not extended by another few weeks, Iran would be greatly curtailed because America has not yet, Trump has not yet felt the pressure of this war, has not paid a big enough price. The only way Iran can get a better deal is if it extends the ceasefire a bit, continues to put pressure on the world oil markets, and increases the pain. You know, so far, many of the world's regions have enough oil reserves, but they are running down fast. So the longer this continues, that is the longer 13%, possibly even 20% of the world's oil is cut off, the faster we reach the point at which oil just shoots off the scale. So I would be really surprised if this war comes to an end this weekend and all deals are cleared, because there are some real sticking points and Iran knows that. Iran knows that it has only two trump cards. One is its control of the Hormuz Strait, And the second is its nuclear enrichment and the nuclear material, the 450 kilos of 60% enriched uranium. It will only give up those in return for something substantive. And what is substantive for Iran? The most substantive thing is sanctions relief. Iran knows that these protests, which happened in January, and the gradual decline in the popularity of the government is primarily due to sanctions. If sanctions relief does not come about, sooner or later the government will fall. And without real sanctions relief, the government can't provide any real economic alternatives to the people. In fact, not just sanctions, it needs some kind of reparations. Now, the US is hardly likely, especially Trump, to pay any reparations, but they could allow some kind of revenue generation through the toll booth on the Hormuz. We know from Scott Bessent, the US Treasury Secretary's statement, that in fact the US artificially created a dollar shortage during December Jan. This is what led to the bazaris, the traders in Tehran coming out on the streets, which initiated the protest movement. Thus, I don't think, even if some deal is reached between the US and Iran, that this will be a short war. I think you will see continued instability in this region for years to come for three reasons. Firstly, Israel, which will remain deeply unhappy as long as Iran's regime survives. They will be constantly looking to either physically attack the regime wherever it can, or its proxies, or more insidiously, it will try to undermine the regime through engineering protests. In fact, this is clear from the Mossad chief statement. The Mossad chief, who had brainwashed Trump into attacking because he had convinced, along with Netanyahu, Trump's feeble mind that Iran is very weak right now. Against the advice of the CIA, NSA, and all his cabinet, Trump was convinced that the regime would fall in 4 days. This same Mossad chief has now made a statement that we will continue to foment unrest within Iran, and we don't foresee the end of the armed conflict as the end of our attempts, that these attempts will continue. The second reason for continued instability will be that a wounded Iran will always be looking for ways to hit back too. It will try to rebuild its strength. It will try to maybe make a dash for nuclear weapons. And in Iran itself, a younger generation of people have taken over. That is, Iran has seen two changes. First, the clerical establishment has been replaced by the IRGC, the security establishment. Within the IRGC, the younger generation, the field commanders, who are more aggressive and who feel that being mild and reconciliatory was the biggest mistake Khamenei and the older generation made. That is, their mildness attracted more attacks and aggression from Israel and the US. And therefore, we should now ourselves become more attacking. And of course, the third reason for continued instability is that the US will keep hovering around the region, trying to keep a wounded Iran in check, trying to enforce Israel's will. In fact, as you know, Trump's red lines are Israel's red lines, that is, zero enrichment, control of range of the Iranian long range missiles. All of these were Israel's red lines. They had never before Trump been the red lines of any US president. And that's because even more than other US presidents, Trump is in the payroll of Zionist Jews in the United States. He receives over $500 million every time he goes in for an election campaign. So in a sense, we are in for a long war at a lower intensity. So who are the biggest losers in these conflicts? I would say it is the developing countries. Developing countries in South Asia like India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, Nepal, Sri Lanka, but also countries in Africa, countries in Southeast Asia, because they will be hit by a double whammy. Higher fuel prices, which leads to higher cost of living across the board, along with much higher fertilizer prices, cooking gas prices, which will really push up the price of food since it will really lower the agricultural yields. This could lead to severe rationing, possibly even hunger for millions of their most vulnerable citizens. And this could be accompanied by a triple whammy if their economy is going into a recession, possibly even a depression. That is, stock markets would fall, property prices would fall, day-to-day activities would lessen. In fact, there might be high unemployment. What about the US? I think the US net might not be a gainer or loser, at least so far that appears to be the case. Trump's base is about the same as it was, 35-40% approval rating, as it was before the war. The US stock market has recovered the losses it had during the war. That is, it has now reached back to the stage it was at before the war. Economic growth seems to be fine. There's no great increase in unemployment. There has been a slight uptick in inflation, but overall, the US economy is doing okay. Yes, it has cost the US $200 billion to fight this war, but that has not gone from Trump's pocket. Yes, it has been an additional cost, but maybe to the US taxpayer, they possibly can even afford it to an extent. Maybe not the poorest American, but certainly the middle and upper classes. Finally, who has been the biggest gainer from this war? I would say it's Israel, because Israel has destroyed Iran at America's expense. It hasn't cost Israel much. America keeps funding it thanks to the huge political donations that the Zionist Jews in America make to political campaigns for the American president, senators, congressmen. It has managed to destroy Iran's industrial base. It has managed to destroy Iran's nuclear infrastructure. In fact, Iran would largely be internally focused for a long time to come because it will take years to rebuild itself. This will leave Iran less scope to help its proxies. And even there, Israel has managed to destroy much of Hamas. Not only that, Israel has managed to destroy much of Hamas and Hezbollah. But not just that, it has taken over large pieces of land. It has destroyed the civilization, not Iranian, but those of the Gazans, of the Palestinians of West Bank, of the Lebanese, and taken over large tracts of land. In fact, it has even taken over large parts of Syria. So the project of Greater Israel has been on the path of actual physical realization. Meanwhile, Israel's enemies are to a large extent destroyed, and Israel has even become dominant over the GCC countries, that is, the Gulf countries. So it has emerged as a big regional power. All of this has happened not at Israel's expense, but at America's expense. America has paid for all of this. The US taxpayer and US interests have been compromised for this. The blowback of this will be faced by America for years to come. So please keep watching. I'll keep bringing such analysis to you. Please, again, do subscribe, like, and comment so that more interested viewers such as you can see this video. So until next time, au revoir.